Little did I know, and only found out years and years later, when I was, playing that first ever game against the Rhine Fire, on their middle linebacker, or on their defensive middle linebacker, was Terry Crews.
Not a lot of people can say they've played against Terry Crews.
Spoiler alert, with a very dramatic last few minutes, we ended up winning the game by a few points, and it was just absolute culmination. Probably the kind of highlight my sports career. I'm standing with Johan Cruyff, and just as somebody was taking the picture, one of my pals come up behind me and scanted me.
No way. In front of Cruyff.
And I said no to Tom Brady. So they were young guys in their 20s.
Yeah.
And they needed a Scottish guy to show them the best pubs and pubs. I ended up being an ambassador for that sometimes.
I mean, like, they watch, and obviously, especially nowadays, we're like Taylor Swift being her own sort of PR for the NFL.
See the amount of girls I've seen wandering about wearing NFL?
It's wild, isn't it?
Branded t-shirts and all
yeah,
that,
aye, Primark is chock full of them.
I know,
yeah.
it's always a Taylor back. It's a good thing, as I say. I'm sure the NFL don't mind a wee bit of free marketing.
Well, that's exactly. It's free for them, you know what I mean? And it's people that probably wouldn't usually be into it. But so, it was sort of, it's getting bigger and bigger. And obviously, they've got a game in Ireland coming up, and they've had Brazil this year. And
so, did you know that I played in Ireland?
Yeah.
For the Bears for one game?
Yeah, I had to look at that. Yeah.
Which is, that's what I'm saying, it's good timing, but I only get 3 plays or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a story in there if you...
But it's something, isn't it? Like, and it's... So I just thought the rising popularity, and people don't realise that there was this team that was here, you know what I mean? It wasn't even just a case of, obviously they had homegrown players like yourself, who had played in almost every season, but there was guys coming from... So one of the people I spoke to was Damien Craig.
You spoke to Damien?
I got him on Instagram one night. I just hit him up like, mate, do you want to FaceTime me for this project? So he just answered me. He was brand new.
Damien's great. What's he doing now?
So he was, at the time he was coaching, he was on the offensive staff of the A&M, the Aggies.
Yeah, okay.
But now I'm sure he dropped down, but to be like kind of, I think he's head coach somewhere. I can't remember. He's kind of changed all over the place, but he'd gone from like Auburn to Bama to like, he's been all over the shop with coaching. But he was cool. And
that's good to hear.
To be fair, until I found him, I didn't realise he'd broken the record at that time for 611 yards, which was wild. So
I know. It's still apparently he shuts up in the Cant Hall of Fame and stuff. There's a little kind of booth about it or something. Bizarrely in that game, would you believe, I get 0 catches for 0 yards.
Well, I was going to ask you if you played in that game, and I thought it's going to look bad if there were 611 yards and you didn't get one of them.
Any of it. I mean, this is the life of a national wide receiver sometimes, when you get some rather talented people on the other side of the ball.
Aye,
I still joke about that, actually. Listen, I'm not precious about stuff. You'll soon find out. I knew my level, and I knew what my job was.
Yeah.
So, and I did it, to the best of my abilities, and I did it for 10 years, and I had an absolute blast.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're obviously still like a fan favourite though.
Well, I mean, what fans are there? Your dad maybe, but
me, who never went to a game.
You never went to a game?
No, me. I never went to a game, but I was still. No, my dad. Yeah, he used to go all the time. But
I know it's funny. Look, I love. You're actually the second podcast I've done this week. Bizarrely,
really?
Well, that's a lie. The guy that has a YouTube channel, so. I did an interview last week, so it's like buses. You don't do it. It's weird, you don't think about. Well, I don't think about American football much. I do. I watch it all the time, and my kids know that I used to play and all that, and they watch the NFL with me. In fact, my eldest son had a little dabble this year. He went to uni, so he went to Glasgow, and he went, "Dad, I'm going to join the Tigers," and I went, "All right," and it didn't really work out. I think it was just not that level. On a muddy pitch on a rainy February morning is not like he was sitting watching on the telly on a Sunday night.
It's not exactly the red zone, is it?
Exactly. No. So I think you got rid of it in that way, but hey ho.
Yeah. No, it was started off as a project, and then it just kind of grew arms and legs. When I realised my dad was so keen on it, I thought it was going to be cool to explore it a bit. And like he says, I mean, there was obviously Damien, Marshall Kenny. Do you remember Marshall Kenny? I spoke to him one night.
Okay, yeah.
He was in the back of a taxi and we had a half-an-hour phone call.
Marshall Kenny, who was he? Was he a running back? No,
he was a linebacker. He went to Southern Miss.
Okay, I can't really remember. The only D guys, I was tighter with the old guys than I was with a lot of the D. But I mean, I probably played with 40. I probably played with nearly 400 people.
Just about everybody. Yeah.
Probably. Went through camp with about 600 people, so try to remember every name, honestly, and who people were is a bit bizarre.
There was a cheerleader as well I spoke to, Ramona Braganza, her name was.
You spoke to Ramona?
Aye.
How the hell did you find these people?
It's honestly like...
Is she still married to Darren?
I've no... does he play for Aberdeen or something?
Aye,
yeah, she mentioned that. She said she's seen him for a while, but I don't think...
Are they married? So, no. Maybe... I thought they were married.
Yeah, hers was it was just an email thing, but it was all part of this project, and even like equipment guys. So I've still kept in contact.
So can you see that? Can you see that project anywhere? Or was that just your university?
It was just odd bits here and there, but we met up. Was it 2 years ago? One of the guys I spoke to was Scott Gifford. Do you remember Giff?
I know Giff. I've seen Giff not that long ago, actually.
He was over. Yeah. So we'd seen him. I think actually there's a photo of you guys together. And I think we saw him later that night.
Right. Okay.
Which is really strange.
When he was drunk.
Told us to come to this Irish bar, and Scott, he's brand new, like
brilliant.
He's quality. But we kept in touch this whole time. So you'll message me on a Friday, what are you doing this weekend? We'll send each other our fantasy league teams and stuff, and we've kept so it's cool. But just connections.
Giff's good people.
He's brilliant. Like, but so when I told him this, he was saying to ask you, and he's
awesome.
Obviously, he says it was you probably played with everybody else that was involved in the Claymores. Having been there for.
We're recording.
Yeah, aye.
Oh, have we been recording?
Yeah, I just thought. Yeah, sorry.
Have we been recording this entire time?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't know. I thought this was preamble. But
no. I thought I'll just.
Thank God I didn't say anything controversial.
I thought you were going to start tearing into Taylor Swift, but not
at all.
You're a Swiftie, it's fine.
There you go, bizarre. I'm obviously not. It's been a while since I've done media, or new media, goodness, that's the thing, new media. With the print journalists used to say, is this on the record?
Aye. Well, because Giff said that to me. He goes, if you're lucky, he might tell you a couple of off-record things about some of the nights out, and I was like, I don't think that's going to go on.
Well, I was going to say, I'll see what stories I put through the filter.
But so, what happened at the start? I understand you went to Strathclyde and you played for a team. Was it the Lions, the Glasgow Lions?
Yeah.
How come all of a sudden you go from playing in a university team? It's not like America where you go college football to national. What happened with you to then get into the Claymores?
Well, it actually kind of worked the other way around, to be honest. So I was a 14-year-old scrawny boy, and this is 1984, and there was at that time, if you couldn't kick a football, a soccer ball, you didn't do any other sports based in the west of Scotland unless you went to private school and they gave you rugby. So, for you youngsters, the TV channels at that point, there was 3 of them, and there was a new fledgling channel on TV called Channel 4, and it had started showing American football on a Sunday night, and the choices of Sunday night viewing were few and far between. Some religious programming maybe and what have you. So this strange exotic sport appeared, and I just fell in love watching it Sunday night. I used to sit with my dad and stuff and watch it. And in school the next day, I would sit and talk NFL, talk American football with some guys in my year, and one of them said there was a local kids team, which I just thought was bizarre. And so we got on a bus one day and went along, and that would have been 1984, and it was Glasgow Lions Juniors. And until I left basically Glasgow Lions to go join the Claymores 11 years later. So I went through junior football with the Lions, and then I went into the senior Lions. Now, there was a lot of money sloshing about. This was Americana. This was, you're talking kind of Reagan Thatcher type stuff. That's old school politics for you. So there was a real love with Americana back then. And American football really took off. There was tons of teams everywhere. And there was Budweiser was sponsoring leagues. There was money kicking about, and the people would bring in high class Americans to play in their teams. So it was a good level in Britain at that time. It tailed off a little bit more at the end. Anyway, that was my love, my hobby. I was doing my after school and stuff. I went to university, as you say, but that was more for academics. So I always was mainly with the Glasgow Lions team, and right about kind of mid-90s there was talk of this new reincarnation of the World League of American Football. It had been and gone for a couple of years in the early 90s, and that was a World League. There was teams in Montreal and what have you. But then this new European version was going to come out, and the chat was that we're going to need some homegrown players. And I went to some rainy tryouts in Edinburgh one day, and I think there was a second tryout, and it all just seemed a bit of a pipe dream. I was a weekend warrior. I was the guy who would, you paid money to play the sport. You paid money
like fees for.
And then I'd be running on the fundraising committee. I'd be lining the pitch before games. All that. It's like it was still a minority sport, and everyone was participating to just make it work. And suddenly there was this chance that I might, inverted commas, air commas, go pro, which was just bizarre because we knew the NFL name was involved, and it had been everything I'd watched for a dozen years, and I couldn't really get my head around it. And then in 1995, a letter dropped through my door that just said, you've been selected to be one of the national players for the Scottish Claymores, which was just I mean, it was so surreal. I'll never forget it, actually, because it just meant, the dream I had was coming true. And it was just a case, I didn't know then if I was going to make it and what it would entail. There was just no frame of reference. I'd reached this kind of level at British amateur American football, but now we're talking the real deal. There had been points I'd grown up wondering, would I ever, I wonder what it's like to catch a ball from an like an NFL quarterback. Is it even possible? Did they throw it that hard and fast? And so it all become reality. And before I knew it, I was asking for I was doing a PhD at Strathclyde Uni, funnily enough, and I was asking for a sabbatical so I could go and play my hobby, get paid to play my hobby. And I was on a plane to Atlanta, Georgia, and we were going to be practicing at the Atlanta Falcons, training centre. I was going to be playing with ex-NFL players who had been allocated to the team, and everything just came at me thick and fast. Truth be told, it was sink or swim. There was a lot of national players who were selected that year, didn't even get out of camp. So I look back then and think, God, I was lucky. God, I was lucky. I mean, even then, I wasn't at NFL level. There's no way I was at NFL level. That was me starting to learn my craft, really. I just must have done enough to show that I could do enough on the field. I could do enough that I knew what I was doing. I could catch the ball and I wouldn't hurt the team. So I then ended up being part of the team. Look, if you need to shut me up at any point, just let me know, because I can just talk about this.
No, genuinely,
because there's so many things. I mean, I'm trying to put it in perspective for anyone who's listening, who maybe plays a minority sport, has a hobby, whatever, and it's suddenly someone says to you, right, there you go, we're going to give you money to do this, and you're going to be playing with the best in the business.
Is that the thing? Is it a case of, so you were doing your PhD, you've obviously got a career in mind, and then this comes along, all of a sudden there's a bit of money to do something you want to do.
And believe me, it wasn't NFL money. This is not a lot of money we're talking about, but it's enough to, it was enough to pay the bills or whatever. And as I say, you were getting a chance to follow your dream, do your hobby. I was really lucky. My PhD supervisor, Professor Rab Mulvey, I don't think I'll ever find this on the internet, but he was great. He'd been a good footballer when he was a young guy, and he'd ended up in academia, and he did really well. He came from the same kind of roots as me in Glasgow, and had absolutely climbed the ladder in the academia, but he had a love for sport, and he said to me, look, I wish somebody maybe give me a chance like this, and he worked hard to get me time off, and off I went. So it was funny when I ended up getting my PhD. I remember I had to say to my head coach at the time, coach, is it okay if I just nip off from practice about half an hour early? I've got my viva, I've got to defend my PhD this afternoon, and I had to go in and get a shower and nip into Strathclyde Uni to do that. Again, another surreal memory. But one of the biggest, there was culture shocks everywhere. When I got off the plane and on a kind of minibus to take me to the hotel the day I arrived in Atlanta, it was courtesy buses, and a guy, the driver of the minibus, turns around and goes, "You don't play football," And most people thought I was a kicker. I probably weighed 10 and a half stone, and I was in the room with these NFL caliber athletes, but managed to make it through. And one of the most surreal things at that point was I'd grown up a big Washington Commanders, they're called now. There was a name change not that long ago.
Oh, because was it your offensive coordinator that was?
Yes,
Doug Williams.
That was so I grown up watching.
So that'd be exciting.
Again, edit this if you need to. But I grew up watching the Washington Redskins. That was my team. I wore 81 because I followed. My favourite player was a guy called Art Monk in the 1980s, who was a wide receiver. Anyway, so I remember sitting watching the Denver Broncos getting torn apart by this, first black quarterback to win MVP, one of the only black quarterbacks at that time. He turned everything upside down in America at that point. And a few years later, I walked into a room and there he was sitting. He was my offensive coordinator, and ended up, as I say, hanging out with him. Just that was the type of surreal nature of this.
So surreal, but then did that kind of mean? Did that give you more confidence in what you were doing? Because you're like, well, here is a guy you're literally sitting in a room like we are now, but one of them's a quarterback, it's won the Super Bowl.
And he was there as a coach, he was, but there was, even the players, there was a guy called Tim Burnett who was allocated to our team. Tim had played like 6-7 years in the NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs, and for whatever reason he'd been allocated over to us. So he'd shown, he was a true NFL calibre athlete, and I tried to learn from them as much as I can. I just try to survive, to be honest. Trying not to get my head taken off. Just try to show I could do something. 95 was a bizarre year. It was up and it was down. This was the first year of the Claymores, and we didn't do very well.
So get rid of the coach like a week before the season.
Exactly.
What's the point in? Fair enough. Like Kreiner obviously come in and done quite well, and quite chalk and cheese next to the next season. But like, it's a massive contrast. Obviously, winning the World Bowl.
It was a cultural.
It
was a cultural thing.
Aye.
So the culture of the first coach left a lot for these ex-NFL players to be desired. I think he was a bit more old school, a wee bit more, I'm going to train and train you guys and treat you like high school, almost college kids, and there was a lot of drills. He was doing full contact. Just doesn't happen in the pros.
No.
And we had so many guys injured, even in pre-season, even before we got in the flight.
Had he coached though? Yeah.
He'd coached. He was just old school, just that kind of make people run into each other to snots coming out type coach, and so we had so many guys that were injured, and we got on a plane to come back, and there was kind of almost, I don't want to say a player revolt. I was just sitting there, just happy to be there, happy to be still part of the team, made it through camp in one piece, and we woke up one morning and said the coach, Larry Kaharic was his name, is gone. There was league representatives there. Your offensive line coach Jim Kreiner will now be your head coach. I just was like, is this what happens in the pros? I don't know. And we went 2-8 that year. We just fought our way through. We lived in Edinburgh. We lived out in the sticks in Crammond, just on the show there. Guys had nothing to do at night.
You used to live there in Diggs and that, did you?
Yeah. Honestly, it was like just a big, you were all just put into this. It was a hotel at the time, and we took over most of it, and it was just like a big dorm house, and the guys. It was fine, but it wasn't. The guys would go a bit stir crazy and what have you. So the culture at that time was okay, but it reflected the field. We didn't do great. But the next year, Jim Kreiner came back. He was really wanting to show what he could do, and I was lucky enough that again I'd done enough in '95 under Doug Williams' tutelage. Doug was great. Doug gave me my first. I never thought I'd even see the field. I didn't think I was good enough. And in my first ever game against the Rhine Fire. He said, Scott, get stretched, you're going on. And I was like, are you sure? But
your family and friends watching?
Yeah, God, yeah. And I went out in that first ever game at Murrayfield and made a catch. And I'll never forget it. It was just a hitch, which is like a 5-yard quick hitter route. I caught a lot of them over my career, but it was great. And I'll tell an anecdote here, and I'll tell this often now, but little did I know, and only found out years and years later, that when I was, playing that first ever game against the Rhine Fire, on their middle linebacker, or on their defensive middle linebacker, was Terry Crews.
I've got that written down to ask you. I noticed he played in the same year as you, and I thought, would you have...
Didn't have a clue.
Not at the time, no.
Not at the time, nor for every other year later, until about 2 years ago. Now, I've got 4 boys, and they all love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and so we'd watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine for years. And I heard in some other podcast, Jeff Reinbold saying, Jeff was a great guy, just a coach that had been involved in many levels.
He's on the telly, isn't he?
Yeah. So Jeff had coached in the Rhine Fire. He'd done a lot of development stuff around the kind of for the NFL in Europe. Just top coach, top man. And he was telling an anecdote and saying I had Terry Crews, and I was like, no way.
Scroll back, try to see if you played against him.
I swear to God, I literally ran down to the basement. I've got a bunch of stuff lying in the basement. Blew the dust off. Found an old program from the first ever game. And there he was, Terry Crews.
That's wild.
Oh, my boys were pumped when they so was I, actually. It's pretty cool. So
those things though, you'll speak to, like I say, is like coming from like Brecon, you'll speak to the odd Brecon player who might have played against like Henrik Larsson, or might have played against Ali McCoist.
There you go.
Not a lot of people can say they've played against Terry Crews.
Again,
like he says, it's pretty unique.
These film stars and stuff. And in sporting terms, I was lucky enough. I played against Kurt Warner, who went on to win Super Bowls. Brad Johnson, he won a Super Bowl.
Do you remember playing James Harrison?
I don't actually. I know he was with Rhine Fire as well.
Wasn't he?
I don't know what year he might have been there. I took 1 year as a sabbatical in my 10-year career, and he might have played in Rhine that year. Probably lucky I didn't play against him. Actually, I played against the Fridge.
Yeah.
Now, if you're of an age, old people who like American football will remember that he was the first superstar of American football in the UK. William Perry.
He's when you said that Channel 4 came on, I think a lot of people talk about people in Britain who got into it. It seems to be guys like him, characters who...
Joe Montana, Dan Marino, The Fridge. You know, those were the names that from back in the day. That's when I first started watching it. So anyway, The Fridge, because he'd been a name, ended up getting taken as a player with the London Monarchs, England Monarchs, whatever, trying to boost interest, etc. I think he was, let's just say, past his best at the time. I don't even know if he was in his best when he was with the Chicago Bears. And just bizarrely in that game as well, the Chicago Bears won Super Bowl 20, and I watched it as an 18-year-old, I think. And they were a famous team. Their defence was amazing. You know, the Jim McMahon at quarterback.
People always, when they reference teams, always say something about the 85 Bears and say it's like the 85 Bears. Is
Was it 85? Sorry, you're right, 85. So it would be the 4-6 defence. Anyway, Jim McMahon, QB and all that. But in the Super Bowl where they destroyed the New England Patriots, probably one of the first ones I was allowed to stay up and watch. Maybe that's... They had a white wide receiver called Ken Marjoram, and I just remember thinking, well, there's a white wide receiver, you know, and he wore black boots in the game and everything. He just looked really kind of cool and quirky. So again, a few years into my Claymores career, you know, the coaching staff was announced for the next year, and there was Ken Marjoram and he was one of the coolest dudes you've ever met.
Really?
Ken Marjoram was amazing. In some of the stories he would tell, what have you. So yeah, it was just all these little bizarre things, from going from fan to actual participant was just bizarre.
What about the World Bowl? What did that actually feel like? It's a unique one because obviously there wasn't a lot, and the league's now disbanded, so it must be strange for players who then went on to play in the NFL, and I suppose that would be a bigger thrill maybe than winning a World Bowl. But what was the World Bowl like? Especially at home in front of, like, it was like 40,000 people.
40,000 people, yeah. So again, you're right. You know, most guys who were in our league, the Americans, they were there to showcase their skills. Hopefully an NFL team would keep them on, take them at camp. If they'd been allocated, they want to show that they could actually, you know, perform at really high level. The whole league was there as a farm league for the NFL, to try and, you know, to give jobs to American football players at the pro level and really try and find some, and they did. They found some gems in there out of our league.
You mentioned a few already.
Yeah, and Dante Hall was one of them as well that I played with. There was loads, honestly. Too many to probably name check here. So the second season, things just seemed to click for us, and we had a good group of guys, some really talented guys, talented QBs. Just, a great defence. So everything was just kind of falling into place. And at that point, halfway through the season, whoever had the best record got to host the World Bowl. So you knew in week 5 who was going to host the World Bowl.
That's a weird way of doing it.
And it was just so the league had enough time to prepare the stadium and everything. Yeah. And so we were top at that point. So Murrayfield was going to be the stadium that we knew the game was going to be in, and we ended up obviously getting the record that we were going to be in it. So it was us versus Frankfurt Galaxy, June 1996. In that week, the weather forecast was amazing, and then the office kind of kept coming to us and saying, look, the tickets are, we used to give it 10 to 12,000, I think, in normal games, and there's 25,000 now coming, or there's 30,000, and like the night before the game it was 40,000 people who were meant to be there, which was probably the biggest crowd I'd ever played in front of. And it's just, again, for a guy who'd stood and, you know, had to move the dog crap off a park to play on it, you know, to suddenly be going out and to play at Murrayfield in front of 40,000 people in a European final that was getting televised live in the States.
Mostly Claymores fans though,
Yeah, definitely. Aye, there was the marketing department did a great job of putting a lot of people into that stadium. But the Germans were wild for it, so they brought a big...
They're still...
they love it. See, the biggest crowds you ever played in the European League were always in Germany, and they were always going crazy for it. So I was just, as I say, the weather really made it, because that was one of the rubbish things about playing in Scotland, was from March to kind of through a spring, the guys, you know, the warm weather guys just couldn't believe it. You know?
It would be quite a cultural shock.
It was. There was a real psychic toll, I think, having to play in that weather for them. But so everything fell into place, and the game itself was amazing. It's funny because it's on YouTube, you know, and I've dipped in and looked at it a couple of times. Actually, so there's a couple of things. Watching the highlights you see on YouTube, it's the American coverage, and suddenly it cuts to the stadium, and they've got Howie Long and John Madden, and they were all proper NFL studio covering the game.
Yeah.
And it's just, as I say, it's just really strange to think that the Browns just kind of sitting watching us play. We lost a star wide receiver in about the first quarter, a guy called Sean LaChapelle. He went down with a groin injury, and everyone else had to move up a step of the ladder. Really threw us. We'd scored really early, in the first few seconds, bizarrely, which really set the tone. We then lost our starting wide receiver, or our number one wide receiver, and everyone had to step up, which meant I get a lot more game time than I was probably meant to.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, with a very dramatic last few minutes, we ended up winning the game by a few points, and it was just absolute culmination. Probably the kind of highlight of my sporting career. I'd played, I'd participated, I'd made some catches, I'd recovered fumbles, returned kick. I mean, the whole day was just absolutely bizarre. But we ended up getting our nose across the line, and I got a nice ring for it.
Where's does that come out on the odd occasion? Though?
It does it now and again, maybe, but very, very few and far between. But they're quite gaudy, to be honest. And mine isn't full of diamonds either. But again, that was the whole point. You play a sport, any sport. You play a sport to get better, enjoy it, participate, whatever it is. And I was lucky enough to be given a chance to go up and up and up and up, and to play at that type of level. Just really was just everything I could have hoped from the sport. I then ended up playing another 8 years after that or whatever. Played in another World Bowl, this time not so lucky. We got beaten the last kick of the ball by...
I looked that one out. You were leading for quite a while, weren't you?
Yeah,
that was 10-6 or something.
I know, that was honestly, I sometimes wake up in cold sweats about that game, because I had a ball thrown to me that I look back and think I maybe should have caught, but then again, intercepted and what have you. But it wasn't to be. And then... I kept playing. I was getting older, obviously. I played from I was 25 when I started, ended up playing into my mid-30s, and that's grown up time. My PhD had come and went. I wasn't involved in any type of academia or research or anything. So my whole life had just kind of taken a whole new turn. Yeah. And I thought it was about time to grow up. And so eventually what happened was the league made the decision that the Scottish Claymores were going to move and become a German franchise, and everything came to its inevitable end, kind of 2003, 2004, and I came blinking into the real world.
Did it never cross your mind to then continue with somebody else, or was it just kind of...
No, I was done. I was done at that point. I was my body was done, my mind was done. It was time to move on and just grow up a bit, I guess. And I was engaged and stuff. I'd met my wife, and that was more important than running a bit of field anymore. Yeah, it's bizarre. It takes its toll on you. All those years, physical toll, mental toll, just juggling. But it was time to move on. I look back, and that's the great thing. I got the chance to look back and say, well, I never have to say I wish I had, because I did, So, and that stood me in good stead for the rest of my life.
What about that little spell you mentioned when you had a wee game with the Bears? How did that come about, and kind of what was it like, that experience?
Yeah, and again, that's not driven by me mostly. It was the league. The league basically came to me. My team came to me, the Claymores. Our general manager, or who was heavily involved, probably was a PR director then, said, look, there's a pre-season game in Dublin now. The NFL have just announced that they're going back to Croke Park with a regular season game this year, 2025. But in 1997 there was a pre-season game. Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney, big Irish history, and they wanted to take this game to Croke Park. They did. They got it across the line. It was the first non-GAA game ever to be played in Croke Park. So it was a big thing.
And it's Steelers again this year, isn't it?
It's the Steelers again because of that ownership. Because of that same ownership. So they came to me and said, it's going to be in Dublin in July. Look, we're going to send you. We've got the NFL given dispensation for each team to have one national player on it. Yeah. I did a pretty decent season in '97 as national wide receiver for the Claymores, and get up my catches and what have you. And again, that's that next level though, because the NFL Europe or World League had rules that said national players must be on the roster, national players must get a certain amount of game time and stuff. At this, I was just getting sent to basically Chicago Bears camp, where this was This was people fighting for their lives, people fighting for their $1 million contracts, people fighting for these coveted prestige spots at the big table in the league. So don't give them monkeys about me. Some. I would probably again maybe I'd stretch myself to about 11.5 stone then, and I came. And I was just thrown in at the deep end, basically. Just train with the Bears for a week. You'll be in the sideline for the game. You might get some game time. Playbooks are really advanced at that level now. I'd always been able to do that relatively well. It's handled the game, and one of the things about playing wide receiver is there's 3 of you mostly out there at a time, so you can not hide a wide receiver, but as long as you know what you're doing and go where you're meant to, because it's a big game of chess, and it's people moving where they need to move at the right time to create space and opportunity, and that's what I'd shown I could do, and I could catch the ball when they threw it to me, and so the playbook wasn't that different at the Chicago Bears. So I was lucky I picked it up quite well. The week at practice was pretty tough. It is what it is. Physically, I wasn't at that level. I'd finished my season. I'd played for 3 months before that. I was bust, physically, and so I probably wasn't the best shape for going into a camp when everyone else was absolutely fresh. And I tried my best. Let's put it that way. And it's fine. There's a couple of things I look back at and go, hey ho. But it was a great experience. Got the jersey. I was going to say
the memorabilia bit is the jersey in there.
Got the jersey in a frame. Cool. Bizarrely, I think after the game, they actually took it off me. I had to, me and the team and some league officials had to fight hard to get it back, but we got it back. Yeah. And it was it's duly in a frame in the house. And
was it quite out of your comfort zone that compared to obviously because if you were obviously one of the mainstays at the Claymores for such a long time, and obviously there would have been guys coming back for second seasons now and again.
Yeah.
A few of them. But just in here with a bunch of random guys, like you says, this is their livelihood. Yeah. There's no plan B whatsoever.
And you were in there with superstars, you were in there with like proper NFL superstars. I remember sitting in the bus beside Brian Cox, who was this massive man as well, linebacker. Big character as well, and you're just like, I'm sitting beside Brian Cox. This is how random. But they didn't give monkeys. I was there for some PR stunt for a week, and everyone else who was trying to make the roster, put food in their family's table, didn't give a monkeys why I was there. But I survived it. I did it, and in the game I get 3 plays, and no one can take that away from me. I was out on the field.
Yeah.
Bizarrely, they threw the ball to me, and it's one of my biggest ever football regrets is they threw the ball to me. There's a golden rule. I would coach any young wide receivers, always go back to the ball. Don't wait for the ball to come to you. Yeah. And in the moment, I forgot that. Simple, fundamental, waited the ball, and the free safety got there at the same time, and the free safety won and blew everything up. And
interception, though?
No, it wasn't an interception, but it just broke up the play. It was, I look back and think if I'd taken one step back to the ball, I could have made the grab in the big league.
Yeah.
For a team, wasn't to be. And as I said, you just look back in these things and say what might have been. But I was out there, I was doing it, and that's what I take away from.
You mentioned the PR bit there. Did you do a lot of PR as one of the national players then? Were you involved in quite a lot of the...
God, yeah. If you had a Scottish accent, you were getting put in front of the TV and what have you. You were getting, there's some bizarre and random photographs that you would always be taking out for a photo shoot to do.
Tilts and everything.
Anything. Some of the stuff I've been photographed doing, I wasn't shy, let's put it that way. Anything to promote the team. And it was being the Scottish guy. Yeah, some of the reasons that's why you were there. You don't. Yeah, you had to be able to play, and the national guys had to be able to step up. I was lucky I'd proven that I could go out on the field and perform and produce. It wasn't just there so you could put you in front of a camera. You had to be able to do, play the sport and do that, and I did. I mean, there's random things. I remember walking in Edinburgh High Street. Somebody, me and my good pal Graham from Aberdeen, and we were talking to somebody, and they were saying something like, "You don't play for the Claymores," and at that point a bus went by that had an advert for the Claymores on it, and it had my face on the side of the bus, and we were like, that's me.
Perfect.
So it was that type of random thing that I look back.
Did you feel a bit of pride about the Claymores or being like a Scottish team? So I was going to ask you, when it came to like playing against the Monarchs and that, did you feel that wee bit of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that
enemy type stuff.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons. The London Monarchs had been a team in the first incarnation and had been a big success. And when they rebranded the league and took it to Europe, they wanted them back.
Yeah.
So again, part of the strategy was, well, we know there's a huge rivalry, Scotland-England, which is probably one of the drivers for having a Scottish team in the first place. So they really did play hard on that. It was, funnily enough, Braveheart had just come out. I think that was 96.
I think my dad told me that before the games they would play the freedom bit on the screens and that, just to try and get everybody.
You know, some of the American guys would paint their faces white and stuff like that. It was, they really get into it a lot, because a lot of these guys were young American guys in their 20s. Some of them didn't even have passports before they even came over here.
Yeah.
They were seeing the world. You know, if they took it the right way and approached it the right way, they could have a great time. You know, and see a bit of Europe and then, well, play football and earn a bit of money, and the Braveheart thing timed out really well, and they get educated in inverted commas again about Scotland, what have you, and bought into all that, and it did, I suppose it helped in a certain extent. It's difficult to, when you're on the field and you're facing up against a guy who's got a Louisiana accent or something, to think you're really playing the English or whatever, but they did it. They had Victor X, they had Royal Blenheim, etc. They had English guys in their team, just like I was a Scottish guy on that team. It did give it a bit more of a hype when we used to play them. So
I looked at the fixtures and that, and so you into your football, like your soccer as well as the.
Yeah. Because
you played it, I think White Hart Lane was one of them. Stamford Bridge. I
used to love that, yeah.
Is that a wee perk as well?
Oh,
even things like Amsterdam, Ajax.
Like
Eintracht Frankfurt.
The stories I can tell you, again, I just need to put some of them through the filter, whether I can or not. No, I mean, as I say, I grew up, all my boys played football. I've never been good at football, but I absolutely love it. I love sport, but, if I'm ever asked, I'm a Thistle fan. So well, that's what you say in Glasgow.
Safe.
So, and I used to tell the guys that as well. Say, like, if you're ever asked in Glasgow, just say Thistle, Partick Thistle.
Well, somebody I think it was maybe Marshall had said to me that you got like a little sort of starter pack for coming, like just what you're doing, like make sure you know the difference between the divide and kind of just a heads up more than anything.
We would be given a kind of cultural induction talk for a lot of things. It wasn't just about football or anything like that. Just about making your way around Glasgow, how to what to say, what not to say, where to go, where not to go. That was just part of it. You would get that in any big city. But yeah, I used to love that. I mean, that was great. I would, as you say, White Hart Lane. Then I remember being in Stamford Bridge.
Was Charlton one of them?
No, I don't remember.
Somewhere I'd looked and I can't remember, even Selhurst Park or something. There was somewhere.
No, it was the ones I remember. Obviously, were White Hart Lane. As I say, Stamford Bridge. You would be walking about getting changed. There would be letters fan mail line about for Gianfranco Zola and stuff, and again it was all a bit surreal. But if you're looking for my most bizarre football related memory, again, do I tell this? The year I took a sabbatical, I went to Barcelona to watch a match, right? I wasn't playing, and we get to Barcelona and we were in hospitality and we might have had a couple of beers, and Johan Cruyff was there.
Aye.
Johan Cruyff's son-in-law, Jordi Cruyff.
Played for Man United.
He was, I can't remember, there was a link there. There was some type of link with I think he might have been kicker for the Barcelona Dragons, right? Again, we did it with Gavin Hastings, you would try and get big names. So Johan Cruyff's there, and what you got to do? This is the day of the old kind of wind-on cameras and all that, disposables. We didn't have phones or anything. No. And I was, sorry, boy, Johan, would you mind getting a photograph? And he's like, no problem at all. And I'm standing with Johan Cruyff, and the guys I was there with, they had probably a few more beers than me. And just as somebody was taking the picture, one of my pals came up behind me and scanted me.
No way. In front of Cruyff.
I did have underwear on. So he pulled down my shorts as I was getting a selfie with Johan Cruyff. So there you go.
Jeez, that's a nightmare.
I think I apologised profusely for the immature behaviour of my friends. And do you know, bizarrely as well, I don't think that picture took the old wind up disposable cameras. The picture really took, but yeah, stuff like that was golden for me. All these
that's
memories.
Quality. So like like White Hart Lane and that as well. Obviously, it was kind of something that that's gone now. People can't say they played there anymore. So
no, I know exactly.
It's something special.
And there was something about, I think in White Hart Lane as well, they had the pitch wasn't big enough. So they had like 7.5 yard end zones, and you used to run right into the wall at the end if you scored a touchdown. So there was loads of bizarre things like that.
Yeah. See the sabbatical. What brought that on?
Just again, I was kind of late 20s. I'd played for 4 or 5. I'd done everything after having won the World Bowl and everything. I thought, how much more is there to do? I'm just rinse and repeat, thinking, do I need to go out and get a real job in the real world and what have you? So I was also involved in sports development for the team in the off season. I didn't just get cut loose. I would work for the Claymores organisation, trying to get kids playing the game,
like locals in the area.
We'd work with local authorities. We'd work with schools, etc. Introducing the game of flag football. And if no one knows, flag football's almost like touch rugby, but you have a couple of flags hanging off. So rather than physical contact and tackling, you're introducing the throwing, the running, the catching and stuff. But rather than taking to the ground, you just pull a flag off and that's you tackled.
Just was safer than that.
Yeah, exactly. And kids play it, and it's actually, it's in the Olympics, at the next Olympics. So it has become a real gateway to American football around the world, and there's leagues across Scotland, England, Europe. And it's a cracking wee fast-paced sport. Obviously, it doesn't last 3 hours or anything like the big game. But so I was involved in promoting that, and I thought, well, I can really focus on that, and maybe that's a job. But then I was standing on the sidelines of games that year, watching it, and just talk about FOMO.
Yeah, aye.
And I knew I could still play and do it. So the next year, I came back.
Yeah, and see, on Wikipedia it said you obviously had done stuff like this to try and get people involved in the game in the country. So are you sort of like an ambassador type thing for Scotland, or is it kind of just stuff like this, I suppose, maybe where you said you'd done a podcast or two and you've kind of spoken about it?
Unofficial ambassador for the sport. I guess back then, leading up the kind of grassroots development stuff, the flag football, ambassador's too strong a word, sports development officer basically. Yeah. But everything I did, the fact I was a Scottish guy performing at that level, it was easier for people to digest it, the fact that it wasn't just Americans doing it, and it had been artificially transported. There was people in this country could do it. The progression now, because you want a ladder, you want people to be able to say, this is a pyramid and I can go on the base and I can work through it and what have you. And that pyramid wasn't really there when I started. I'd be given that chance, and what we tried to do was create that with flag football, to tackle football, to then there was kind of national level stuff, and then national player programme where you could get involved, and then if you were lucky you made it to one of the NFL Europe teams, and if you were great at that, then you get a chance in the NFL maybe, which latterly in the league they would send some national players over to camp, and I famously was asked right at the tail end of my career. I got a phone call one night and said, look, there's a national player from Germany who's meant to be going to an NFL camp and he can't, he's pulled his hammy or whatever, and we want you to go to camp with the New England Patriots. And this was the time of Tom Brady and everybody, and I was like, wow. And I was mid to early 30s. I knew I was getting done. Yeah. And I thought about it long and hard, and I said no.
Really?
Yeah. I went, look, I think it's a young man's game and it's a young man's opportunity, and I'd rather it went to somebody else. And I said no to Tom Brady. So there you go.
To be fair, Tom Brady wouldn't have been the name Tom Brady is now.
Well, but I'm trying to think back then, probably not.
Maybe a ring, but
probably not. But I look back on that as well and think, I think I made the right decision, but especially in looking at what had happened with the Chicago Bears a few years earlier when I was younger, probably fitter and what have you. I just thought, no, I'll let somebody else go out there and prove their worth.
Give a chance to, yeah. Do you think we'll ever see a team back in the UK? Whether or not an NFL Europe type thing again, or a
I don't know. It's a really good question, that, because talking about the development, the NFL have done a lot of good work in making sure that pathway is still open.
Yeah.
So the international player pathway, etc. They can pull in athletes from different sports that way, but there's still
that Welsh guy just now.
Sarah Smith or whatever. he's like yourself. His dad used to just sit with him and watch the NFL and what
same
have
sort
you.
of story, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he's always hankered and harboured a dream of trying it. And he's a sick athlete, you know. He's got all the building blocks. Now it's difficult for some of these guys, especially skill positions. You know, you can be the best athlete in the world, but there's such nuance and the skills that you need. You know, they only really come with years and years of immersion in the sport.
I suppose.
So. Like I'm sure he's doing everything he can to make that succeed, and he's got, as I say, he's got all the tools, the physical tools. I'm sure that he needs. So all that's here, but as I say, there's a strong program still at amateur level, and if you're good enough, they'll find you.
Yeah.
And there's opportunities for you that way. So yeah.
It's different. It's really different to the stories you hear from people who are coming over here, because a lot of times when you speak to people, even like Giff, and you'll speak to them and it's more about, it's kind of not a holiday for them really, but it's, you know what I mean, it's different. Whereas this is your...
It wasn't a holiday. It was...
But like the likes of the cultural shocks and stuff, especially for Giff who wasn't playing, and he'll tell me about the pubs he used to go to and stuff, and he actually told me one story, they used to have like a shipping container where they would keep all their equipment, and he says that he managed to sneak in a few beers now and again, and he would chill and drink there when you guys were all getting changed and finished for your practice and stuff, and he said that now and again you might have popped your head in and had a little beer too.
I'm trying to listen. Well, if Giff's listening to this, I certainly don't remember that. You know, defamatory there to say I'd be drinking before Sons Across the Yardarm. But look, those guys that come across from America and stuff, they all had different goals, ideals. You know, the backroom. I used to end up hanging out with the backroom staff more than any of the equipment guys and all that, and the film guys and stuff. They were cool as hell. And we used to go hang out. You know, there was, like, you get the après-ski scene, you get the après-American football scene. That was a big part of it. There were young guys in their 20s. And they needed a Scottish guy to show them the best pubs and clubs. I ended up being an ambassador for that sometimes as well. But it was a great time. I mean, I had the absolute time of my life. Honestly, just jetting about Europe and playing sport, getting paid for it. Just hanging out. Yeah,
it does seem like an absolute dream, to be honest.
It was. Now, as I say, 2 shoulder surgeries later in later life and stuff. It does. All contact sport takes its toll eventually.
Definitely. Yeah.
I was lucky enough. Again, I had one bad injury the year after the Bears. So I'd have been 98. I came down bad my shoulder. I ended up with surgeries, what have you. But I missed a few games through that. But kept my knees. But
it was close to a decade you'd played football. Do you think if it hadn't been with the Claymores, it maybe wouldn't have lasted as long as it?
My football career?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would have...
Shoe on the other foot and you would have gone over there for a similar sort of thing, you know. Because a lot of these guys, like I said, you'd maybe get a couple of boys sticking around the team for maybe 2 seasons from America, but usually they would then move on to, whether it was
1 year. It would be 1 year. You know, most... 95% of the guys, 98% of the guys would be one and done. You know, they come in, do their tour of duty, try and make it an NFL team, and if they could, they could, and if they couldn't, they couldn't. They would go on with their lives. But we had some guys who loved the experience, and you know, some really talented guys. You know, Willie Tate, I still keep in touch with. He ended up with the Chiefs for a wee bit. You know, George Cockhill, who ended up a Super Bowl. I think he had 2.
He got the Broncos.
I think he won 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos. He came back a couple of times. He just loved coming over here and playing football and seeing the world and Europe. And Joe Murphy was one of my besties, you know, during it all, and we were roommates and everything every time he came over.
He was a great player, was he not?
Brilliant player. And in that World Bowl '96, when the number 1 guy kind of went down hurt, I mean, Joe was number 1. You know, so he had to really step up, and by God, he stepped up. You know, I think he had MVP and he scored 3 TDs, including this ridiculous one-handed catch at the back of the end zone. And he went on to win a Super Bowl with the Rams. He went on to win a Grey Cup. He's the only person in the world, a player in the world, ever to have a Grey Cup ring, a World Bowl ring, and a Super Bowl ring.
That's wild.
He was back 2 or 3 times. Good people. Yeah. Good times, good people. That's what we used to say.
Memories, no regrets, Stan.
Nothing, as I say. It's good. It's weird, but good to do things like this when you suddenly blow the memories off, or blow the dust off the old memories. I don't know if the Johan Cruyff stories, you know.
That's a great story. Yeah, it's magic. It's just getting pantsed.
It's just bizarre. Absolutely.
What did he say? What was his reaction?
I don't think he noticed.
He didn't notice?
Because he's looking at the camera.
Yeah.
It was me. I was looking at the camera as well, and suddenly, whoop, And I was like, ah! And I just grabbed him back.
What a shambles.
I know. Boys will be boys and all that, as I say, but I look back at that one and laugh. But
yeah. Thank you very much, though. Cheers.
No, listen.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Quickly, because I'll just take a screenshot from this.
Oh God, I keep forgetting this was getting filmed as well. So whose jersey was that? I think 12.
I don't know if it's just like a 12th man thing, or if it's because it's got a name
that's
on
what
it.
it might be. That's exactly.
Well, it says, my dad had, I think it was Frankfurt Galaxy one at home.
Okay.
So I've still got that in. My girlfriend actually bought me this even for Christmas. It's just like a
Oh my goodness, that is old school.
proper old school. I said to her, I was like, "Where did you get that?" She said, "I don't know, I just found it on
eBay or something?